Welcome to State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. The State of Wellbeing is a holistic well-being podcast with the goal of supporting the campus community as we strive to be a growing, high-performing, and healthy university.
Welcome to State of Wellbeing podcast. I'm Caitlin Walters, the Wellbeing Specialist. Today I'm joined by
Karen Eidem.
And we are going to be discussing gratitude today.
Karen, thank you for having me. Oh, sorry.
Thank you so much for being here, Karen. Karen, do you want to introduce yourself first? I invited you because I've taken a lot of your yoga classes and I really enjoy your approach to teaching. Can you tell us a little bit about your yoga journey, your experience, and what brought you to teaching?
Yes, I feel like it was a lifetime process to get into yoga. Since I was very young, I was very interested in spiritual studies. Not necessarily religion, although, I'm from Quito, Ecuador, and so very Catholic country, so you are surrounded by religion. But there was something always intriguing to me about what else is out there. And so I was about 10 years old when my family and I joined the Mental Physics Institute. And believe it or not, this is an institute that is headquartered out of Yucca Valley, California. And so I started learning in those classes. And this is like a school where you would go on maybe like a Saturday or in a weeknight and learn breath work, meditation, and some philosophies that were driven from Tibetan spirituality books and other types of certain philosophies. And so the purpose of that was to just be a better person, right? To understand that what happens within is happening without. And just, I guess the purpose was ultimately enlightenment, but, nobody quite gets there. But so it was a lifetime growing. And then when I went to college, I went to the United States, and I kind of got sidetracked from that. And it wasn't, it was always present, that spirituality aspect in my life. But it wasn't until I had my first son, who's going to be 17 tomorrow, and I didn't know this at the time, but I had postpartum depression. Okay, back then it wasn't really talked about or addressed like it is nowadays. And I just happened to be walking downtown. I used to live in Minnesota back then, and stumbled by the studio. And I saw people practicing. I was just walking outside, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay. And so something drew me into asking, what is going on? Because I had honestly, even though I was into all this, philosophies, and had never really heard much about yoga. I've done Tai Chi, but not really yoga. And I walked in, and this teacher was like so welcoming, and I was like, all right, I'm going to give it a try. And I fell in love, and I started feeling so much better. Depression got better. I felt stronger. As a first-time mom, I was like, oh, I didn't know, how neglected your body can get. And it was life-changing. And that's what really, I started to share with my friends, and I said, okay, maybe I should get certified, because they were so intrigued, and they're like, teach us. And I was like, I don't feel comfortable teaching or leading a class without knowing properly what to do, right? I felt a lot of, commitment to it. So I went ahead and found this school. There's lots of schools in the cities. Somehow, I don't know honestly how I ended up there, but I went to this class. It was in Uptown. And it was so interesting. Just connected with the teacher. And she was like, by the way, we're starting teacher training. And I was like, okay, things just flow when it's meant to be. That's how I learned to live my life. And I'm like, all right. And it's been, 11 years since then? And I've been teaching since. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So we're releasing this episode around kind of Thanksgiving time, when we kind of, in general, we talk a lot about gratitude and being thankful. And so I thought that you'd be a good guest, because you do often tie gratitude into your classes, and you do a lot of meditation during your classes, and oftentimes those kind of lean into gratitude. And so I wanted to bring you in and ask, what does gratitude mean to you?
That is a big question, and I don't think there's a simple answer to that. Gratitude to me is this force that is life-changing, right? I actually have a quote from Wade Dyer, who's one of my favorite quotes, and it says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Mm. And to me, gratitude is this force that changes how you look at life, right? It's really easy to be grateful when things are going well. But the goal is to be grateful when you are in the most adverse moments in your life. And I think that's what I bring to practice, right? The awareness that you have a choice, that you can be grateful, and you may call it silver lining, but you can always find, even in those hard moments in life, like the lesson that's only going to make you stronger and be more resilient. But I think it comes tied with an enormous sense of surrender. Some people call it faith, and just trusting that what we are constantly doing in life is led by this narrow lens that's been shaped by our past or our culture or surroundings. And so it's hard sometimes to see the greater picture out there. And when things that are harsh happen in life, you're like, easy to say, why me? So gratitude allows you to take a step back and say, okay, I'm going to trust. And what can I gain from this? And I'm sure more often than not, most of us have walked through the threshold and be like, oh, hindsight, this was a great thing, right? It was hard at the time, but today I'm better place, I'm stronger, I'm in a better job, I'm in a, I've made new friends, whatever it is, the lesson. So I think the awareness of gratitude just helps you get there a little faster.
I love that. Have you ever had a moment where gratitude has changed your perspective on something?
Daily. More so now that I'm more aware of it. Yes, but I can go back to when my kids were little. You just want to bubble wrap them, right? You just want to protect them from everything. And I had just had my daughter. She's 14. And but I had just had her, and my son ended up needing to have this emergency, very in-depth surgery. And it was terrifying, right? You don't want your 4-year-old to go under anesthesia. And at that moment, I remember sitting back and saying, okay, if he has to go through this, number one, I'm thankful it was caught because he would have lost his kidneys. Number two, we lived in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. We had access to Children's, which is one of the best children's hospital in the country. And so you start to count all those blessings, if you may, and it makes that burden a little lighter. It's still heavy. But, also looking around, my parents flew in from Ecuador to support us. My in-laws, because they didn't live near us, drove there to help, also with my daughter. And even the nurses, because we were in this children's floor, and nobody else is allowed, let alone newborns. But I'm nursing, right? And so the nurses are like sneaking me in through the service elevator, and they're like, you got this, you can do this. I mean, you can't ask for more support, right? So in that moment, gratitude changes your perspective, and everything worked out great, So, yeah, but I can say there's thousands of times when gratitude has helped everything lighter and easier, and yeah.
I think I've witnessed it a lot too. I'm at that age where now I've lost all of my grandparents, which I was very close with all of them, and so it's always hard to lose a loved one. But I think gratitude helped process a lot of that loss, especially with my last grandfather to go. He was just a very full of life person, and he lived his life to the fullest, and he did everything that he wanted. He was full of joy. And even towards the end, when it was one of his birthdays, we all got together to celebrate him, and I think he probably kind of knew these birthdays are coming a little bit more limited, and maybe this might be one of the last. And so we interviewed him, and we recorded him, and we asked him a bunch of questions, and the way he just spoke about I think he had this feeling of if I were to go tomorrow, I have lived the best life, and that gratitude for not mourning the fact that, I'm coming, my life is coming to an end, but the gratitude for what he had been able to live and experience I think that always helped change that perspective, especially when we actually did lose him. It wasn't so sad. I mean, it was sad, but it was like, if he were here, he'd want us to be really happy. And even if he's not here, he'd want us to be really happy. And so being able to kind of shift our perspective of like, well, we're grateful that we had 85 years with him and that he was so fun and full of life and that we got to like learn from that. And so I think it can really help in like some of those really dark, scary times when you do practice that gratitude of like, I'm grateful that I have this. I'm grateful that I have the support at this hospital while I'm dealing with, something really scary for my child. I think that it helps a lot with like the darker times too.
Absolutely.
How does practicing gratitude impact our mental health?
I think that's an excellent question. I think it helps us bring a sense of joy to every day. Nowadays, I think that whether it's the political climate or economics or weather shifts, you name it, life can be a little more challenging. And so when you wake up in the morning and you choose to be grateful for what is, rather than waking up and acting from a place of fear of what is not, I think it makes life more livable. So often we are focused on, I'll be happy when I'm on vacation or when it's the weekend. But when you wake up and make the choice and you actually are grateful for waking up, right? For having a warm bed or being able to have a breakfast, those little things are what builds up in your life. It's really what matters. Those little moments. I talked in yoga practice about let's not focus on the grand moments in life, but let's bring perspective to the abundance that exists in those tiny little moments. And also with that, I think we need to when you're grateful for the everyday, for the little things, you are more conscious that you are also not perfect. And so give yourself grace. Because the goal is not to wake up and be a perfect human and be grateful 100 times. But the goal is to just catch yourself in the moment when you're falling short and be like, you know what, I'm going to give myself grace and take a breath. And my next breath is going to let me start over. So I think gratitude allows that space for joy constantly in your day.
Yeah. And I think it's important to like think of, I like that you mentioned like the little things. I think it's important to think of that, especially in like we talk about this a lot on this podcast, but in this day and age of like social media where we're seeing people who are kind of showing like the best, biggest moments or how perfect their house is or how, well behaved their children are or whatever that might be. And I think it is really important to like for us to stop and think about what we're consuming and that, even though our life doesn't maybe look like that, their life doesn't also look like that either. And so I think being able to like stop and take gratitude for the things in our life, even the little things, even if it's just like if you're really, really struggling and you're, really going through a difficult time, maybe it's just I got out of bed today, or I live in a house that has a working heater because it's kind of cold outside today, I think even just like those teeny tiny things, even just starting there is really helpful. I did look at some research that has been done recently on gratitude, and gratitude can help reduce anxiety, and it can help improve your just overall mental well-being, reduce depression. It can help with sleep, which I found really interesting. And I thought that was interesting because I often use a gratitude, I don't think it's an exercise, but I often practice gratitude when I can't fall asleep at night. If I'm somebody who's a little prone to anxiety, and so if my mind won't turn off at night, I start going through a gratitude list in my head of like all the different things that I'm grateful for, and all the different people in my life that I'm grateful for. And typically I don't finish the list because I fall asleep, which is, I don't know if that's good or bad, but I think even just practicing it to like help calm yourself and help ground yourself is nice.
Yes, definitely. I think gratitude has that aspect of focusing on what matters. Right, and not giving so much weight to the things that we worry about. And I do also have had anxiety episodes, and I agree. Gratitude has been a huge thing to help overcome those. I don't love confrontation, but so, for instance, like it's inevitable. You're going to argue with your spouse. And sometimes I don't like that, right? And I'm like, you know what? I should at least be grateful I have somebody that cares so much to have this argument. So, I mean, it may be silly, but I think you can always bring it into your awareness to lighten the things and, help out.
How do you show appreciation or show gratitude, maybe beyond words?
Showing up, I feel like it's interesting because I think as humans, we tend to show that we care in ways that would be kind of like the love languages, right? It's so important to be aware of what others are grateful for or others need. And that is really a challenging thing to do because you tend to act from your own perspective. But to me, I think one of the things is showing up and try my best to just be present. Again, I'm not perfect, but at least I'm trying to hear you out, listen to you out, making space for you. And just showing gratitude sometimes in those little things, like when you slow down enough to notice when somebody else needs a hug or a thank you or just your presence, I think that's where you make space for them.
Yeah, I think so too. I often too, I think it's even as simple as hey, it's not, for me, I like to bake. And so it's hey, I made a batch of cookies and I brought in a couple to share with my friends or my coworkers, or even just I'm picking up a cup of coffee and I might pick up a second one for you just because I want you to know that, you matter to me, and that it's something so simple that I think a lot of times I get a lot of thank you cards, and I think thank you cards are wonderful, but sometimes it's even just the little in-between things of just hey, I was thinking of you and I got you a cup of coffee, or maybe it doesn't have to be a gift, maybe it just be a text message of hey, I was thinking of you today and I'm glad you're in my life,
Exactly. And I think it goes back to let's not focus on the grand gestures. Let's bring gratitude to those tiny little things,
Mm-hmm.
right? That can make a difference. So it all comes back in full circle.
How do you tie gratitude into maybe a mindfulness practice?
Well, I believe those two go hand in hand. I don't think you can necessarily be grateful without being mindful, and vice versa. I think mindfulness opens the doors for gratefulness, for gratitude. Practicing mindfulness really is about allowing yourself to slow down and taking it all in, breath by breath. That's at least how I've learned to practice mindfulness. Really going back into, I don't know if you remember this exercise we've done in practice where I bring chocolate for everybody, like a little Hershey's Kiss. And I'm don't touch it yet. And we're going to sit with it. And it's we're going to put it in our hand and observe it and really look at a Hershey's Kiss. And nobody has really taken the moment to do that and how it's wrapped. And I'm okay, now look at everything that has gone into it, right? Let's go back and open it up and how the little paper is really wrapped perfectly underneath. And who decided one day they're going to wake up and love cocoa beans in order to produce them in a different country and grow them, and these families are affected by this. And who designed the machine that decided to wrap this little thing so perfectly, and the people that are putting it in a truck so that it is in your, the list is endless. So when you slow down, there's no lack of things to be grateful for the little Hershey Kiss to put it in you, in your hand. And so then we open it up in class and I'm okay, now put it in your mouth and really taste it with all that awareness of what went into making this little chocolate. And it really tastes sweeter and more oh, I probably don't need one more because I'm so rich with the experience. And I think that's mindfulness, slowing down enough where you make this tiny little Hershey Kiss this enormous experience. And so then you're so grateful for everything that went into it. And imagine if we did that with everything we do. I mean, we wouldn't get anything accomplished maybe. But, yeah.
I think picking something each day that you can do that with, maybe that would be a good way to approach it. If you could write a gratitude letter to your younger self, what would you be grateful to your younger self for?
That is a hard question. Going back in time, I would actually tell myself to be grateful for my body. I grew up in a country where image was very important. You had to be very slim in order to fit in. And so I did suffer from those, body awareness issues. And that was heavy my whole life. In fact, I think through my adult life is when I started to finally be able to shake that. So I would write a letter to my young self and be like, don't tie your self-worth to your size. I think that would be huge. And I think that, along with being grateful, again, sometimes for the adverse moments when we've had this, because I didn't have this knowledge back then. Back then it was easier. I think maybe as a kid it's easier to understand it, but to bring more gratitude to those hard moments in life.
Yeah, I think that's a great. I think I would probably write almost the exact same letter to my younger self too. I think too, just being aware of all of the things throughout your life. I think it's so easy to be like, oh wow, this good thing happened, and like not actually like stopping to sit with it and be like, I am really grateful that this, worked out the way that it did. Or I think sometimes we just kind of like, we get so busy and we're like hoping for something good or something big. And when it does actually happen, I really try to like stop myself and have some moments of gratitude, because I think it's very easy to let it just kind of like slip by, or almost feel like it's an expectation that like the good things should be happening. Like, yeah, like that's what I was hoping would happen and it did. Like, I'm going to keep going. But I think like actually like just sitting with it and realizing that it's not guaranteed, and that we should be a little bit more grateful for the good things that happen, the small things that happen, and finding that gratitude even in the tougher times too. Do you have anything else, maybe like a ritual or a habit that has to do with gratitude that you like to share with others? Or I know you just mentioned the chocolate one, but are there any others that you think are good ones for people to practice?
I think one thing that I've come into awareness lately is that we have all these gratitude moments in life, but there's also those moments that blow your mind. And so to allow yourself to sit with them, they're like a manifestation of this abundance. And it could be as simple as today you're walking, but you simply got to see this cute little bunny and it's enjoying, something to eat. And if it fills you, to sit with it, because it's only filling up that cup of gratitude for admiring something beautiful, admiring something great. Like, it doesn't have to be anything, again, grand. But I like to practice that now, because sometimes we go on walks and you're in nature and it's great. But you see this beautiful flower and you don't allow yourself to slow down enough to be mindful and grateful for the beauty that exists there, or the things that make our life richer. So although I think gratitude can be practiced, and the goal again is to do it in the most adverse moments, I think it's important to catch yourself in those moments where you are blown away by life, and also let those sink in, because it's only going to make you happier. And maybe that is the purpose of gratitude, I think. So just slow down enough to catch those.
I often too, so I used to work a lot in the outdoors, and I would take people on trips, and I also used to try to like recommend folks, like especially when we're outdoors in a beautiful space. I know like the natural instinct is like, I gotta document this. I want to take all the pictures so I don't forget. But I would try to like it's fine, like take a picture, but then like put the phone away and actually just like sit in the moment, because otherwise you're kind of living it through your camera lens and you're not just actually like watching the sunrise. You're gonna actually miss the moment because you were trying to document it. And so I'd often try to like encourage folks to maybe step away from the phone a little bit and just like enjoy the beauty in our natural surroundings as much as possible, in like through your eyes, not through your phone lens. I had a couple questions that folks could use if they wanted to kind of try to incorporate more gratitude into their lives. And this comes from Harvard, so this is what they've put together. But one question you can ask is, what happened today that was good? Obviously, it's kind of a simple start. Another was, what am I taking for granted that I could be thankful for? Which people in my life am I grateful for? Maybe what is the last book I read or movie, show social media clip I saw that I really appreciated? Why did I appreciate it? What am I most looking forward to this week, month, year? Why? And what is the kindest thing that someone has said or done lately? I think all of those are good questions to just kind of, if you haven't actually tried to like sit down and practice gratitude, those are good starting points of ways that you can kind of incorporate it. And like I said, I do mine as I'm trying to fall asleep because I find that I can't shut my brain off. And oftentimes like thinking of things that I'm grateful for really do like it slows my mind down and helps me just kind of puts me to sleep at night at ease, I would say. Anything you would add to that list?
Perhaps to also allow yourself to put yourself in other people's shoes. That opens the door for gratitude. Sometimes we think we're stuck somewhere and it's so hard, and then you take a moment to look up away from your own little bubble and just realize how good you probably are having it.
Yeah.
So, but I think all those things that you suggested are very valid. And one of the things I also love is like if you can't consciously like put words into what you're grateful for, at least close your eyes and focus on your breath. That is the one thing that you can be grateful for, and just observe it.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful, beautiful way to think of it as well. I would also just recommend that folks consider volunteering or getting involved in their community is another way to practice gratitude. I think kind of like you were saying, like if being able to help others and putting yourself in others' shoes. And so maybe this season, kind of as we get in towards the holidays, like find different ways to volunteer in the Brookings community or in your hometown community, and maybe help those that are maybe a little bit less fortunate than you, and see if that helps you feel a bit more gratitude too.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's always opportunities to serve others, and that is hugely tied to joy. So even when you think you have nothing to give, you do. You do. And so, like, if you don't have time to volunteer, which I love volunteering. It just makes me so happy. But if you don't have time, because that's life sometimes, it's as simple as walking a lady out and helping her with her groceries, or, paying for somebody's gallon of milk. Things like that. There's always opportunities. We just need to be in the lookout.
Yep. Wonderful. Anything else that we missed, or anything you wanted to discuss as far as gratitude goes?
No, I'm just really thankful that you're holding this, because gratitude to me has been, like you say, so important, and a driving force that I think could change your life if you are aware of it. And so just to bring a little bit of perspective about it and to talk about it is huge, I think. So thank you for putting this together.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. For today's processing questions, we want you to think about what is one good thing that happened to you today that you can be grateful for, and what are some ways that practicing gratitude can impact your mental health.
Thank you for listening to this episode of State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. This podcast is brought to you by the Mental Wellbeing Team and SD State Health.